GBC Podcast number 14. I'm Courtney Weiss.
I'm Shane Blankenship.
Hello.
Hi. So it's been a while.
It has.
You had the coronavirus.
I did.
And now we're back.
Yes, we are. I've missed this.
I've missed it too. It's been, we were saying 4 weeks, but I think it's been longer than that. I feel like it's been 6 weeks or so since we did.
I think it's been like 3 weeks because the last one we did was July 9th.
Okay. Well, I guess
it
hasn't
feels
been. It feels
like
a long time. It does.
And I had to quarantine, so I couldn't really come over here.
Right.
So
how was that?
It was fine. I mean, I just keep telling people it's not intense, it's long.
Yeah.
And it seems like, for the first day you might have a fever and then all of a sudden a headache. And then it's like, as you go on, it's just weird symptoms that just pop up. Yeah. And you're like, am I done yet?
Yeah.
Am I done yet? I was trying to apply the whole time having a kingdom mindset to having the coronavirus, Shane, because that's what you've kind of taught us to do. And that's what we've talked about on this podcast so many times. And I did okay, especially I told you earlier that I have this tattoo on my wrist and it's God did not create me in the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and self-discipline. And so I just kept telling myself, like, do not be fearful about this. Like, God's got you. It's fine. And my symptoms never got bad. I mean, I was very lucky I had a mild case. But it was kind of like the words and actions of other people that kind of got into my mind and made me fearful. Mm-hmm. And I thought maybe this podcast could be about the kingdom mindset and how we could apply it to the coronavirus, whether or not like our husband, wife, neighbor, best friend, podcast partner gets it.
Right. Well, I think one of the things I think is cool about you actually getting it, and that sucks that you had it, but I think it's cool is because throughout this whole thing, here I am being this guy to try to tell people to follow Jesus and constantly calling people back to that. But now you've had it, and I feel like, especially on social media, for all the social media junkies out there, the people who speak the loudest about it are the people who you never had it.
Very true.
You moan about it and you gripe and you complain and you know what everybody should do or what they shouldn't do, but you've not had it, but you have.
Yeah.
So I feel like you have more authority than most of the people out there who have this really loud voice, but really their words are empty because they're just repeating what they heard somebody else say or whatever news source they're listening to. But you've gone through it, you've lived through it, you know what it's like, and you're on the other side of it.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, and I have been posting a bunch of stuff on social media, on Instagram, just about the recovery process, like what supplements I'm taking and stuff like that. But Shane, to your point just now, I think I have a different mindset than other people do.
Well, there you go.
I knew I was going to be fine.
Yep.
Was I ever really concerned about my health? No. But I will tell you, when people would send me messages or text messages and say scary things, it does get into your mind. And when other people, which I love, there's several people that would send me messages and be like, you just have to trust God. God's got this. God already has the names of the people that are going to get the coronavirus written on his hands. And you also said something a long time ago, I think during one of our first coronavirus podcasts, you were like, this went through God's hands before it got to us. And that's another thing that I kept telling myself. So maybe, in this event where everyone is acting out of fear, we can just give perspective to how to apply the kingdom mindset. And there's no better way than the last sermon that you preached on about Paul in prison, chained to a wall, going to the bathroom nowhere, but right there, I guess.
Right, yeah. I mean, that's the kind of the point that I was making with the indoor plumbing piece, because, there's a lot of creature comforts that we don't think about.
We got what you were saying.
So that creates a whole new level of discomfort and issues within it of itself. I mean, and I didn't bring this up, but go back to World War II, especially those men and certainly women who fought in the Pacific, who ended up being captured by the Japanese, and some of the conditions that they went through.
Horrible.
Yeah, just horrific. I mean, the disease, just because of the sanitation issues that they had, lack of food, lack of treatment, all that kind of stuff. I think about that being the closest thing that maybe we could relate to the Apostle Paul and what Paul went through as a prisoner of Rome in a day that had a prison system that we don't understand. So anyways, one of the things that I saw in the text, if you will, was that he saw his prison experience as a platform to make the message of Jesus known. So much so that he says the entire Praetorian Guard or the Imperial Guard, those palace, the guards, the military soldiers who guarded Caesar's household, that they had heard the message of Jesus. But even beyond that, his household, now whether that's referring to some of his relatives or the people who live and occupy that house, I mean, obviously, regardless of the reason, they're close to Caesar. And Paul makes it known that not only have they heard the message of Jesus, but they have become followers of Jesus, which is crazy because the people who are closest to Caesar ought to be becoming more like Caesar, not like Christ. But they are becoming now more like Christ because of this message. So it's a prison, but that prison becomes a platform. And I just try to figure out, all right, well, how's it more relatable because we're not in prison,
right?
But we have problems.
We do have problems. It is hard to for that to be relatable. But one thing that I keep thinking about Paul is like his passion. He was in dire situations, circumstances,
sure.
right? And his passion for just seeing the heavenly, just taking this towards the kingdom, just always looking to Jesus is really impressive.
Yeah.
Much more so than I think mine was during this coronavirus that I was really not that sick. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I think that it's commendable, and I think that we should discuss like all of the things that Paul, like I was like, how did Paul get to be so passionate about that kind of mindset in the first place, and how can I be? And you're like, you have to be open to that transformation that only Jesus can make in your heart.
Sure. He's able to call the Philippians to something, not because there's this thing that they've got to strive to or they have to work towards getting at, but he's able to call them to something that they're completely capable of because God's changed them. Because the message of Jesus has changed their life. They are not who they used to be. They are not even just new people. They are new creatures, new creation, as what the text says, in Christ Jesus. So now they're capable of stuff that they weren't capable of before because of Christ Jesus.
And I don't think it's an overnight thing. I don't think
No, not at
Paul
all.
went from killing Christians to, just kind of preaching. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, for him, basically, it was, he's on the road to Damascus. He's actually on his way to round up some followers of the way, is what they were referred to back then before they got the title Christian. And Jesus encounters him with a bright light. People who are traveling with Paul, they don't see what he sees, but they hear what he hears. They just can't make it out. But Paul is able to clearly hear and see in that moment, but it ends up blinding him. And so for 3 days, he's blind and doesn't eat anything, doesn't drink anything as he begins to process this. And so, what's the amount of time that passes between that moment and his ministry journey? Well, some scholars would argue 14 years. Some scholars would argue 7 years. Some scholars would argue
years, though. Not a day.
Yeah, exactly. And some people would say, well, it was much less time than that. Who knows? And at the end of the day, I guess it matters. But I think that you're exactly right. I think that moment when you give your life over to Christ and God saves you, He changes you, does something in you, you are now equipped with the possibility of everything that God has for you. The realization of that possibility, that's what I feel like takes time.
Well, and I think using every single situation, problem, circumstance to point people towards Jesus, even when it's really hard.
Yeah.
Even if you're having trouble in your marriage, if you're, fired from your job, whatever. I think of a million things in the moment. That's what's the hardest thing to do. It's great to have hindsight, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's always like easy to look back and be like, oh, that was so God. But in the moment, you are fearful and you don't know all these unknowns. The coronavirus right now, I mean, we don't know what life is going to look like. So in the moment, I think it is difficult to reach for the heavenly mindset, but I think that there are things that we could do to make sure that we're more surrounded by the heavenly mindset rather than all the news and all the social media and all the negativity and stuff that is just really earthly mindset. Making sure that you're listening to the right things. You're surrounding yourself by the right people are praying for you, right?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And I think that, when it comes to having that mindset, and that's probably the most important thing that we're talking about, that's at the heart of what we're talking about, is being intentional about what you're listening to, being intentional about who you're around, the influence that they're having, but being intentional to keep your mind focused on Christ. spending that time with him. We say around here all the time that we've been called to know God and to make him known. And I feel like for a lot of people, it's like, okay, well, how do I check boxes to make him known? I did this or I did this. And to some degree, how do I check boxes to know him? But if I can't write something down to do something, to accomplish something, it almost falls to the wayside. Whereas when you really begin knowing somebody, you're not checking boxes.
No.
You're spending time, right? It takes that time and that relationship, to build that relationship. So the time is important, and for us, that time in prayer, that time in His Word, and allowing God to move, but being intentional about that, and letting that become that filter, that focus of your heart and mind as you live out the day. So I think that it's important to move in that direction, but at the same time, you got to be paying attention to what else you're allowing yourself to be exposed to. One quick example of that, because my wife and I were talking about this last night, Hannah was like, I had to walk away from somebody.
Yes.
Like she had to physically walk away from somebody. She said because of just what was coming out of their mouth, and it was a very negative, just rant going on. And what was interesting is Hannah said she was so consumed with what she didn't even realize that I walked away from her.
No, she's just talking.
Yeah, she didn't realize that I walked away on purpose because she was so consumed with the drama of the moment. And this is dealing with all the crap going on in the world today.
Yeah.
And but she's just like, I'm walking away.
Yeah. So I think that in the moment, sometimes I pray in that moment. I'm like, God, I don't know. I got nothing.
Yeah.
But I just know you're going to find a way out for me, and whether it be walking away or turning the channel, whatever it is, blocking somebody, you have to do what you have to do. Mm-hmm. And I think being constantly in prayer, and God's voice is not very loud.
Yeah, sometimes it's very quiet and it's in the whisper. And that was Elijah's story. It wasn't a loud booming; it was a whisper. Mm-hmm. You got to be still to hear a whisper. And
I think that he does use secular, means to reach people, because some of the messages that I got were super like, you have to cling to God, cling to your faith, and it's so true. That's what I needed to hear. Absolutely. Because, like I said, when someone else is telling me I'm going to get worse before I get better, you're like, okay. How do I handle this?
Yeah.
Well, this was helpful.
Well, hopefully it's been helpful for those of you who are watching and listening. And it's I know it's broad, I guess it seems like, and there's so much more that we can talk about this, and maybe we
only
will
have 15 minutes.
Yeah, maybe we will in the coming weeks. But as far as having that kingdom mindset, and pay attention to what you're thinking about. Pay attention to what you are setting your mind on. Because social media is pretty toxic right now.
Yeah.
And if you're sitting there scrolling, you're feeding something in your head.
The demon, you're feeding that dragon.
Absolutely.
It's like eating sugar.
And it's affecting, whether you think it's affecting you or not, it is. It's absolutely, as much as
100%.
Parents telling their children, well, I don't want you to listen to that music. Well, I like the beat. Well, yeah, but the message isn't good. And so, well, I'm not really listening to the message. I'm actually just listening to the sound of the music or whatever. Well, yeah, but that message is getting into you. You may not absolutely. You may not realize it, but your mind is processing things, and by all means, I'm no psychologist or,
You're a pastor.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
So really. We can continue on with this, Shane, over the next couple of weeks if you guys want us to. We would love to hear from you, as always. Give us some ideas or any kind of feedback, but stay safe, everybody, but also use your circumstances to point people towards Jesus.
Absolutely. We'll see you next time.
Bye.